Dad perfect events. I was standing in my hallway with my suitcase by the door when my phone buzzed. A voice memo, forwarded from Nolan's number, sent to me by mistake, meant for someone else. I almost didn't play it. My cab was probably already circling the block. I figured it was just Nolan wishing me a good trip one more time. I almost tossed the phone in my jacket pocket and walked out. But something made me hit play. He's already on his way to the port. One-way ticket. Cabin 847, 8th floor, balcony. Make it look like an accident. After the gala night, that's your window. My son's voice, clear as anything. I stood there in that hallway for a long time, suitcase by my feet, front door 10 steps away. My son's voice still in my ear. I didn't shake, I didn't yell, I just let it settle. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked out the door. My name is Gerald Holt. I'm 58 years old. I spent 30 years as a construction engineer in Chicago. Bridges, overpasses, infrastructure work. I raised my son Nolan alone after his mother Carol died of cancer when he was 11. I never remarried. Nolan was my whole focus from that point on, and I told myself that was enough. I want you to understand something before I go further. I'm not telling this story because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because I want you to understand what it feels like to stand in your own hallway and realize the person you gave everything to has been planning your death. That's a specific kind of feeling. There's no word for it that I know of. 3 weeks before the cruise, Nolan showed up at my door on a Saturday morning with a golden envelope and the biggest smile I'd seen from him in over a year. He said he and his wife Diane had been talking about me, that I looked tired, that I needed a real break. Inside the envelope, a 7-day Caribbean cruise, first-class cabin, all meals included. The ship departed Miami and looped through the Bahamas, Nassau, and Turks and Caicos. My eyes got wet when I saw it. I'm not embarrassed to say that. I thought, my son finally sees me. I should have looked closer at what he was actually doing. In the months before that Saturday visit, there had been signs. I kept finding reasons to explain them away. Nolan had been distant since the previous spring. Calls got shorter, visits stopped. When I asked how work was going, he'd say fine, busy, and change the subject. One afternoon, I stopped by their house unannounced and found him on the back porch arguing quietly with someone about money. When he saw me, he hung up fast and smiled like nothing happened. Said it was a deal that fell through. I believed him. Another time, I heard Diane on a call with a friend saying they were underwater. She looked up, saw me in the doorway, and her face went flat for just a second before she smiled and wrapped up the call. Later, she said they'd over-budgeted a renovation. I believed that too. I was 58 years old, and I still wanted to believe the best about my son. Standing in my hallway that morning, with his voice in my ear, I thought about all those moments I'd filed away as probably nothing. They weren't nothing. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The first call I made was to Philip Dawes, private investigator. I'd met him through a neighbor the previous year and kept his card in my wallet for 14 months without ever thinking I'd use it. He picked up on the third ring. I gave him the short version. My son had given me a 7-day cruise, and I had reason to believe I wasn't supposed to come back. I needed him to dig into Nolan's finances as fast as possible. Philip didn't hesitate. Transfer me $500 to get started. I'll have something for you within 48 hours. The cab pulled up to the port. The Star of the Sea was enormous. 12 stories of white steel sitting in the Miami sun. Bigger than most buildings on my block back home. Hundreds of people streaming toward the boarding ramp with their luggage and excitement. Couples taking photos. Families arguing about sunscreen. Every single one of them was going on vacation. I was going to work. I checked in, found cabin 847 on the 8th floor, set my suitcase on the bed, and stood on the balcony for a minute. Looked down at the water. Thought about the voice memo. Then I went to find the passenger services office. The woman at the desk, Nadine, according to her badge, pulled up my reservation and frowned before she could stop herself. Mr. Holt, I see your cruise booking is confirmed, but there's no return flight or transportation to Chicago. Our packages usually include round-trip arrangements. I asked who had purchased the package. She turned the screen slightly. Nolan Holt, his credit card. I kept my voice easy. Slightly confused old man who just wanted to make sure he could get home. She was kind about it. I told her I'd go ahead and book my return right now, just to be safe. She found me a 3 p.m. flight from Miami to Chicago for $750. I asked for a printed receipt. I folded that receipt and put it in my inside jacket pocket. That was evidence number 1. I met Marvin Cleary at lunch on day 1. He was at a window table in the main restaurant, eating alone with a book open next to his plate. Silver-haired, well-dressed, the kind of man who looked comfortable in his own skin in a way that takes a long time to earn. We shared the table because it was crowded, and he gestured to the empty chair without looking up from his book. We talked through the whole lunch. He'd owned a logistics company out of Cleveland for 28 years, sold it 3 years ago. His wife passed 2 years before that. This cruise was something his kids had been pushing him to do for months, and he'd finally given in. Same story as mine, almost exactly. By that evening, I told him everything. I'm not normally someone who opens up to strangers. I've been more or less self-contained my whole adult life. That's what happens when you raise a kid alone for years. But something about Marvin was steady in a way I needed right then. He listened to the whole thing without interrupting once. When I finished, he closed his book, set it on the table, and said, "Tell me what you need." 4 words. I hadn't had a friend like that in a long time. Maybe ever. Nolan called the first evening around 9 p.m. "Hey, Dad, how's the cabin? You sleeping okay?" Not, "How's the cruise?" Not, "How's the food?" Sleeping okay. In the cabin. I noticed that. He asked a few more questions. Was I spending time on deck during the day? Had I explored the whole ship? Were the railings along the upper deck as nice as the brochure showed? Marvin had his phone recording on the table between us the whole time, face down. When I hung up, Marvin tapped the phone once. He asked about the railings. "I know," I said. That was evidence number 2. Diane called the following afternoon. That one surprised me more. She never reached out to me directly. We were polite with each other at family dinners, but we weren't close, and that was mostly on her end. She had a way of looking at me at gatherings like I was a piece of furniture that had been in the wrong room for years. Her voice on the phone was too bright, forced cheerful, the way people sound when they've rehearsed what they're going to say. She asked how I was enjoying the trip, said Nolan talked about me all the time, that he really wanted me to relax and enjoy every moment. Then I mentioned, casually, that I couldn't find a return ticket in my documents and had gone ahead and booked my own flight home just to be safe. Silence. Not a pause, a silence. "You didn't have to do that. Nolan was going to handle it." "When?" I asked. He's been busy. He would have taken care of it before the end of the cruise." I said I understood, that I didn't want to be any trouble. She wrapped up the call quickly after that. When I told Marvin, he nodded slowly. She knew. She may not have planned it, but she knew. That was evidence. Number 3. But something else stayed with me from that call. The way Diane had gone quiet. It wasn't the silence of someone caught in a lie. It was the silence of someone scared. There's a difference, and I've been around enough people in my life to recognize it. I filed that away. Bart Wells appeared on day 3. I first noticed him at the pool, fully dressed in a green shirt and long pants while everyone around him was in swimwear, standing near the bar with a drink he never touched, eyes tracking me every time I moved. Every time I looked directly at him, he found something else to look at, not fast enough. Marvin ran a simple test. He got up and walked to the far end of the pool deck. The man's eyes didn't follow him. They stayed on me. That evening, Marvin and I went down to the casino. I found a slot machine near the entrance and played the role of a man who'd had one too many mimosas at breakfast. Talked to myself a little, laughed at nothing, swayed slightly in my seat. Made myself look easy. Bart, different shirt now, yellow, sat down at the machine next to mine within 10 minutes. We talked. I gave him exactly what he was looking for. Told him my son had sent me on this trip because I'd been working too hard, that I was traveling alone, that my cabin was 847 on the 8th floor, beautiful balcony, though I got a little anxious out there because of the height, that after the gala dinner on Thursday, I planned to go straight back to my room because I tired out easily these days. He smiled and said, "Be careful near those railings at night. The decks get slippery with the sea air." He walked away 5 minutes later. Marvin had been watching from a blackjack table across the room. He followed Bart to the ship's public phone bank and stood close enough to hear 3 sentences clearly. 8th floor, cabin 847, balcony. After the gala, that's the window. Same words as the voice memo. Nolan had briefed this man himself. That night, Marvin. And I moved all my essentials up to his suite on the 12th floor. Cabin 847 would stay officially occupied. Lights on a timer, bed turned down by housekeeping each evening. But I wouldn't sleep there again for the rest of the trip. The next morning, we went to see Captain Howard Briggs. His office was small and practical. Charts on the walls, a heavy desk, the smell of strong coffee. Around 50, gray at the temples, the kind of steady that comes from 20 years of managing everything that can go wrong at sea. We laid out everything, the voice memo, Marvin's recordings, the printed receipt from the services desk, the casino conversation, what Marvin had heard at the public phones. Howard listened without interrupting. When we finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're under this ship's official protection as of right now, Mr. Holt." He arranged additional cameras in the hallway outside cabin 847, plainclothes security on the 8th floor starting Thursday evening, and handed me a small device that fit in my jacket pocket. Press the button, silent alarm, security responds in under 90 seconds. The plan was simple. Attend Thursday's gala as normal, leave visibly early, tired old man heading to bed. Take the elevator to the 8th floor, walk slowly down the hall, then double back to the stairwell and go up to the 12th. Marvin would already be there. Cabin 847 would be empty and waiting. Thursday evening, I put on my good suit. The charcoal one Carol had picked out for me years ago, the one I still wore to things that mattered, and went down to the main hall. The gala was something else. The whole space had been transformed. White flowers everywhere, candles on every table, a live band playing in the corner, silverware that actually caught the light. Hundreds of passengers dressed up and happy, the way people get when they're far from home and temporarily free from everything that normally weighs on them. I ate dinner with Marvin. We talked about his daughter in Columbus, about a fishing trip he'd been meaning to take for 2 years. Normal conversation. I had 1 glass of wine and nursed it for 2 hours. Across the room near the bar, I could see Bart in a white dress shirt and dark blazer. He was tracking me. I pretended not to notice. Around 11:15, I started letting my tiredness show. Rubbed my eyes, rolled my shoulders, said goodnight to a couple at the next table we'd chatted with earlier. Marvin and I shook hands like 2 men who'd had a nice dinner and were calling it a night. I took the elevator to the 8th floor. I walked slowly down the corridor toward cabin 847, slowly enough that anyone watching the camera would see a tired man going to bed. I put my hand on the door like I was reaching for my key card, paused, then turned and walked to the stairwell at the far end of the hall and went up. Marvin was already in his suite. He had his tablet propped on the coffee table, showing a live feed from the security camera in the 8th floor hallway. Captain Briggs had arranged access for us. We sat in the dark and watched. For a while, nothing. The hallway empty. The ship humming around us. Somewhere far below, the band was probably still playing. At 12:08 a.m., a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor. Bart, moving slowly, close to the wall, wearing dark clothes now. Black gloves. He paused at the corner, looked both ways, then moved to cabins 847. He crouched in front of the door. Tools came out of his jacket. Small, specific. He worked the lock quietly and efficiently. The door opened in under 2 minutes. He slipped inside. Marvin and I didn't speak. I had the panic device in my hand. About 3 minutes passed. Then Bart came back out onto the balcony. He stood at the railing and looked down at the water. Looked sideways along the hull. Stepped back and looked at the railing itself, checking the height, checking the angle, figuring out exactly how this was supposed to go. I pressed the button. The light blinked once. Silent. On the screen, 2 security officers appeared at the far end of the corridor, moving fast and quiet. A third came from the stairwell side. They entered the cabin together. We heard shouting through the walls even from the 12th floor. Then voices getting controlled, then silence. Marvin put his hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything. I sat back and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 4 days. Captain Briggs called an hour later. His voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath it. "We have him in custody. His phone has been searched. There are text messages from your son, Mr. Holt. Specific instructions, dates, the method, your cabin number, everything." I thanked him and hung up. That was evidence number 4, the one that closed everything. The next morning, I called Diane. Just Diane. I timed it carefully for when I knew Nolan would be showing a property across town. I kept my voice calm. I told her someone had broken into my cabin the previous night and been arrested by ship security. I told her what they'd found on his phone. She didn't say anything for a long moment. I said, "Diane, I don't think you designed this. I've thought about it, and I don't believe that's who you are. But I need the truth from you right now, because what happens next depends on it." She started crying. Not performed crying. The real kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and isn't controlled. She told me Nolan had been losing money on online gambling for over a year, that it started small and got completely out of hand, that there were people he owed money to who had stopped being patient. She told me she'd found paperwork in his desk 6 months ago, something about a loan using my house as collateral. And when she'd asked, Nolan told her it was handled and not to worry. She said she didn't know the full details of the cruise plan until it was already in motion, and by then she was scared of what Nolan might do if she interfered. I kept telling myself maybe nothing would happen, she said. I know that's not an excuse. I told her it wasn't an excuse. I also told her that choosing to tell the truth now still mattered. I asked her to send me whatever she had on her phone. Any messages from Nolan about the trip, about money, about any of it. An hour later, screenshots arrived. Nolan's own words going back months, planning conversations, references to Bart by name, dates, the loan company. Everything laid out in his own texts like he'd never imagined anyone would read them. That was evidence number 5. Philip Dawes called that same morning with his full report. $80,000 in documented online gambling losses over 14 months. A loan taken against my house using forged paperwork. My signature on documents I had never seen. $40,000 already drawn from that loan. My life insurance policy. $150,000. The house, current market value, $280,000. Total Nolan stood to collect $430,000. Enough to wipe every debt and start over clean. When you land tomorrow, Philip said, we go straight to the district. Chief Floyd Tanner is already expecting us. I've sent him the financial documents tonight. My flight landed in Chicago at 2:50 p.m. on Saturday. Philip was at baggage claim. We drove straight to the precinct on the north side, where Chief Floyd Tanner had a conference room set up. He was around 47, serious in the way men get when they've seen too much to be surprised by anything, but he stood up when we walked in and shook my hand like he meant it. He reviewed the full file. Philip's financial documents, Marvin's recordings, the printed receipt from Nadine's desk, the screenshots from Diane's phone, Captain Briggs's security report, the items recovered from Bart's jacket. He went through everything without rushing. Then he looked up and said, "In 15 years as chief, I have never had a victim walk in here with a case this well documented. This goes to the DA tonight." The arrest warrants were signed by 5 p.m. At 6:15, Nolan was taken into custody at his house. He and Diane had packed suitcases. There were plane tickets to Toronto sitting on the kitchen counter. Departure the following morning. Diane was at the precinct voluntarily, full cooperation, as she'd agreed on the phone. She sat across the hall from me in that fluorescent-lit building, and we looked at each other through the partition for a moment. Neither of us said anything. I just nodded. She nodded back. That was enough. The trial took 4 months. I testified twice. The first time I sat in that chair and looked across the room at Nolan, I thought I'd feel something dramatic. Rage or grief or some kind of release. What I actually felt was tired. The deep, specific tiredness of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has finally set it down. Nolan's attorney framed everything around the gambling addiction, the financial, desperation, the pressure from the people he owed money to. Some of that was probably true. Desperate men do desperate things. But here's what I kept coming back to during those 4 months of hearings. He chose to do it to me, not a bank, not a stranger, his father, the man who worked nights and weekends for years so Nolan could go to a school that mattered. The man who sold his truck to keep the lights on when Nolan was 13. Desperation explains a lot of things. It doesn't explain that choice. The jury came back in under 3 hours. Nolan received 15 years. Attempted murder, criminal conspiracy, financial fraud, and forgery. Bart Wells received 8 years for criminal conspiracy and breaking and entering with intent. Diane was not charged. The court recognized what the evidence clearly showed: a woman under significant psychological pressure who had ultimately cooperated with the investigation and provided key documentation. When the verdict was read, I sat in my seat and looked straight ahead. No celebration, no tears. I just thought, okay, that's done. I didn't sell the house right away. I'd thought I would. Get out fast, start somewhere new. But when I stood in my kitchen the evening I got home from the sentencing, it didn't feel right to run. The house was just a house. I'd lived there 22 years. Carol had died in the bedroom at the end of the hall. There was too much real life in those walls to walk away from because of what one person had done. So I stayed, cleaned out the garage, repainted the spare room, fixed the back fence I'd been putting off for 2 years. Slow and deliberate. That felt right. About 3 months after the trial, I started volunteering at a resource center on the South Side, specifically talking to older men dealing with family financial abuse and isolation. The first time I told my story to a room full of men my age, I watched their faces. When I got to the part about standing in my hallway with the voice memo, every single one of them recognized that moment, not the specific event, the feeling underneath it. The moment you realize the story you've been telling yourself about your family isn't the true story. That's the hardest part. Not the danger, not the legal process. Accepting that you had the wrong picture of someone you loved for a very long time. I tell them, that's not your fault. You trusted who you trusted. What matters is what you do when you find out the truth. Marvin and I talk every week. He came to Chicago in October, and we had dinner at a steakhouse on the North Side, talked about his granddaughter's soccer season, a book he'd been reading, whether I'd finally fixed that fence. Easy conversation, the kind that takes years to build with most people, and somehow just existed with Marvin from the first afternoon on that ship. I started taking dance lessons in November. An instructor named Spencer, swing, some salsa, basic ballroom. I move like a man who spent 30 years on construction sites, which is to say, I move like the floor is something to be structurally evaluated before you step on it. Spencer says I've gotten surprisingly good for a beginner. I think he's being kind, but I'll take it. Carol loved to dance. We used to go to a ballroom on the North Side when we were first dating, back when I was 24, and had no idea what I was doing, but she was patient with me. I hadn't thought about that in years until I found myself back on a dance floor at 58. I think she'd have something to say about all of this. Knowing Carol, it would probably make me laugh and cut straight to the truth at the same time. I think she'd be glad I'm still here. If you're a man my age watching this, and you've been quietly carrying something you shouldn't have to carry alone, I want you to hear this clearly. The people who underestimate you are wrong. Whatever they've decided you're worth, whatever they think you'll put up with, they're making a mistake. I know, because I was that man. And I found out at 58 on a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean that I was someone completely different from who they thought. Don't wait as long as I did to find that out. The men who underestimate a quiet father forget one thing. Silence isn't weakness, it's patience. And patience, when it finally moves with everything behind it. I didn't just survive my son's plan. I outlasted the version of myself that kept making excuses for people who didn't deserve them. And that man was the one who really needed to go.